back to business here in Nigeria. Welcome everyone to Business Morning, live to you from Channels Television, Nigeria's headquarters, Lagos, of your news leader. I am boasting them off. Of course, we're back to the markets after a very long Muslim holiday that started on Friday. So let's get today started with what is no longer breaking news, but of course it's a news that is generating so much buzz, had generated so much buzz, whether Nigeria will be out of recession or will be digging out of recession in the second quarter of 2017. This is what the numbers show us as we start the show today, and we're going to put that up. 0.55% growth in the GDP. We try to knock off the first quarter and try to grow at least stronger than we were in the second quarter of 2016. In terms of aggregate GDP, we're doing very nicely. We're about 27 trillion naira in figure. And of course, you can see the growth for this second quarter, 2017, higher, 2.04% on the previous year. The key drivers of this latest GDP, of course, the oil sector, agriculture, manufacturing, and trade. Financial institutions also contributed a very decent percentage to the headline GDP figure. Let's go straight to what you already have on the wire as we speak, then to bring in the Statistician General of the National Bureau of Statistics, Mr. Yemi Kale, who is live to us from our Abuja studios right now. And of course, live here in Lagos with me, here in the studios, is Bismarck, economist and chief executive officer at Financial Derivatives Company. So the two of them will be looking at this, these numbers for us. But let's hear directly right now this morning, as this has been flagged off from the head of the Statistics Office, Mr. Yemi Kale. Good morning, sir. It's good to have you on the program.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you here, and we appreciate that coming here on Channels Television for this very exclusive interview. I'm not going to ask how this figure was arrived at, but how much was put in to get these numbers out, and how did we walk our way in terms of the numbers to this positive GDP reading for second quarter?
Well, I think we put in a little bit more effort this time because we are obviously delayed. I think we should have published a couple of weeks earlier, so we had to speed up the work by putting more hands into it. But the procedure is the same. We adopt the international best practice, the international standard for industrial classification and the system of national accounts. So the procedure doesn't change in terms of the competing numbers. Like you said, you've already summarized the numbers. It was largely as a result of agriculture maintaining its performance, manufacturing retaining its positive growth, which it also did in the first quarter, and a recovery in oil production. I think oil production is the first in the last 5 quarters, and we know that directly and indirectly the oil sector contributes about 50 to 60% of the GDP. So an improvement in the oil sector will have an overall impact on the overall GDP for the economy. And this is why industry turned positive for the first time in 9 quarters, even though services remains negative.
Yeah, if you look at the non-oil as a marginal growth in second quarter, that's about 0.45%.
Yes.
So what were the factors for that?
Well, non-oil is largely agriculture and then the services sectors. So the services activities. Now, services activities are tied largely to consumer spending, to consumer purchasing power. For example, trade. For example, air and road transport. For example, telecommunications. They're all services, and they're all tied to consumers' ability to spend. And now, because inflation is going down, but still in high double digits, we are still having constraints in terms of household consumption expenditure. And that is why the services sector usually will be the last sector to recover under these kinds of situations. So it's not particularly, and the service sector is a huge part of the non-oil sector. So that's still been, it's still challenging.
I'm sure you've, the authorities, let me put that word, your employers are already aware of these numbers. Let me put it that way. That is the Nigerian authorities. What's the sentiment in there within the government circles when you show them these numbers? Of course, there will always be a preview before the rest of us get it. What's the reading within the government about this number?
Well, it's always, and it's done everywhere in the world, I believe. It's to give my employers, as you call them, it's a courtesy to let them have a look at the numbers before it is published, to give them a sense of what is happening, and to basically give them an opportunity to respond to them. So yes, they usually get it a few hours or a day before the official publication. But at the NBS, our job stops at presenting the numbers as they are. We don't get feedback regarding what their opinion. So I can't really answer that question. All we can do at NBS is to give out the numbers and to explain what the numbers mean. The sentiments, the opinions, as far as my employers, as you call them, are concerned, is not something that I'll be able to answer as Statistician General.
That is well understood within the context of what you do and how independent these numbers have to be of your organization as a statistician organization. Of course, our guest is here for a couple of minutes on the program. Bismarck, the CEO at Financial Derivatives, has a few questions. Good morning. It's good to have you here, sir.
Good morning, Bosun.
I'm sure you want to react to a few things.
I think Dr. Khaled said something about industry, but I noticed that manufacturing dropped from 1.36% to 0.64%. Basically, there's a contraction in manufacturing. I'd like you to differentiate between manufacturing on one hand and industry on the other.
Well, industry is a combination of mining as well as manufacturing. So the combination of those two is what gives us industry. The recovery in industry as a whole has to do more with the fact that crude oil and gas production recovered very strongly. I mean, last quarter it was minus 16%. The same period last year was minus 23%. So to go from minus 23% or minus 15% to positive 1.6%, that's a huge jump, particularly for an economic activity that is, I think, number 4 in terms of the share of GDP. Now, manufacturing grew slower. I wouldn't really call it a contraction in the second quarter. From, like you said, from 1.6 to 0.6. But I don't think that's something we consider a contraction. What you see is a situation where, at the end of the day, what is produced by these manufacturing companies is likely to be consumed by households. So if households' budgets have been squeezed, it will also impact on what manufacturing companies are able to sell. If you look at many of the manufacturing companies that produced, you will see that output for many of them went down, even though their gross earnings went up. Now, their gross earnings went up because they had price control.